Yeah, you want to get this thing started?
Let's get this party started.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I've already been recording, which is nice because you never know what funny things can happen in the beginning. But,
That's bait and switch right there.
totally. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. This is Mike Lane with the Men with Heart podcast, where we talk to people about health and healing through their own personal experiences, to help share about the power of healing. That's what this season is all about. And I have a lovely friend and guide in this life, Meg McCracken, calling in from Reno, Nevada. And she has been a wonderful light in my life. And I've been so happy to be able to stand by her side and her stand by my side in the process of helping people find truer expressions of themselves, whether it's through movement. Meg is a yoga teacher, yoga nidra teacher, a mother. And I'm really excited to have her on board. And let's start off with thanking you so much for taking the time. You're a busy lady. Thanks for coming on to the Men with Heart podcast.
Oh, I'm so honored to be on here, Mike, and thank you for that nice introduction. And I just want to let you know how instrumental your presence in my life has been on in where I've grown and how I've grown. So thank you for having me on, and just thank you for being you.
Thank you. Delicious.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, for this, I remember you and I were running in the hills of Reno a couple of months ago. I think it was back in August. And we were running with your dog, Mr. McGee. And I hope Mr. McGee has learned how to run by your side now instead of tripping you.
He's working on it.
But I was talking to you about health and healing. And you said this is one of your passions, is talking about this. And I would love for you just to talk a little bit more about that, and also talk a little bit about your past of what's brought you to where you are now.
Yeah, well, that's a little question, but I'll give it a stab. But health and healing have been a huge part of my life. I came to I know that you mentioned before that I am a yoga instructor, meditation instructor, and I work in all of this in this arena. But I originally came to yoga because my body was really tired and really sore and really broken at a pretty young age. And so I came into yoga to help to fix my body that was broken. And what I learned, like in a nutshell over the years, that was like 20 years ago, what I learned in a nutshell over the years is that there is a difference between fixing and curing versus healing. And what yoga really offered me was a little bit the fixing and curing, but more the capacity for true healing in my body, in my mind, in my spirit, and in my life. And so that to me, I didn't realize that there was a difference before, and now I know that to be completely true. And yes, my body does feel better, but ultimately, no matter what I'm asked to face in my body or in my mind or in my life, I feel like the tools that I've gained along the way have really helped me to know that I can be with anything that arises and be healed through it and in the face of it. So that's a tiny little snippet about my path.
And yeah, my personal experience of watching how you model this so beautifully. I mean, it's you have a very deep morning practice, and you also, my experience is that you live it throughout your day. You're very aware, and it's so beautiful to watch how you step through life, and watching the students then just watch you, and then they take that on. And I think it's so wonderful to get to watch that. I mean, I get to hang out with you a couple times a year. And the thing I also love about you is your ability to just speak your truth. And I think that's such a huge part of healing.
Yeah.
Is knowing when shit ain't right, and having the tools and the vulnerability to ask for help, or also just go into ourselves.
I mean, that's the thing. I think that you hit it right on the head there, Mike, with the truth, like in our capacity to be able to not only speak our truth, but to be able to be with our truth. And that to me is what true healing is being able to be right at the center of ourselves, in the center of our lives, and to first know what is true for us and know what it is that we're being asked to stand in, and then be able to engage and express through that in some kind of way. But it really is all about being in all of the layers of truth. It's pretty amazing. And that, to me, is one of the first steps. Just being with what is one of the first and truly the most fundamental steps towards healing. Because, in the work that I do, like I was mentioning before, it's really not about curing. It's not about getting rid of anything. It's really about cultivating the capacity to be able to see what is true and to be with that and not try to be without it. And that's the whole crux of the equation.
Mm-hmm. One of my friends, I'm not really a meme sharer, but this one was perfect. So I had her send it to me, and it says, healing doesn't mean the damage never existed. It means the damage no longer controls our lives.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it no longer controls our lives, but there's also this thing of like, it is a part of the story.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's just it doesn't necessarily control our lives, but it also has helped to direct our lives. I mean, it's so interesting, when I have worked with one-on-one clients and that sort of thing, when they come in and we are, working with whatever it might be, they've got doctors and PTs and wonderful people like you to help them fix whatever's going on with them. But then they come in to me, and we talk about what's right with them, and what's even right, not only with them just in general, but also what's right within the context of their pain. And what is that pain pointing to? What direction is it pointing them towards? And how is it a part of their story? And how do they then get to mine the gem of rightness from right there in the heart of the pain?
Yeah, talk more about what's right. I think that's such a huge part of healing is focusing on what's right rather than the pain. Just talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So, and I want to be really clear that I'm not like at all disparaging, going to the doctor and getting things fixed and cured when they need that to happen. And there's sort of a clinical model around that that's really important, where you go into the doctor and they say, or the, therapist or whomever, and they say, oh, you tell them a little bit, and then they say, oh, this is what's wrong with you. I know what that is, and we're going to do X, Y, and Z in order to fix that. And within the capacity of healing, though, perhaps somebody comes to you and is talking to you in, whatever way. And the job here in healing is to go, oh gosh, there's something right with you. And I know what that is. And we're going to work on integrating that into all of the layers of your being. And also that there is a rightness in your pain. I mean, and just for a really concrete example, I was just leading a training, and we were talking about this very subject. And one of the students in the training, he's going through a lot in his life right now, and he admittedly has been running from the struggle of all of it. And he got sick, and he all these different things were coming up in his body, and then finally he got a broken leg. And so of course he goes to the doctor to fix his broken leg. But he came to me, and we were talking about how life is asking him to stop and sit down and be in the middle of all of the struggle that he's facing in his life. So there's a rightness in his broken leg. Yeah, we're going to go to the doctor and fix it, but also there's a rightness in the way that he's being asked to sit down in the middle of his struggle and his heartbreak and his suffering, to be with that and let it transform him and move him in new directions and help him to choose in, all these different ways. So that's just a really concrete example of there's rightness to all of it.
Yeah, and I think we often overlook that. We really just focus on what's not working and the pain, and being in the profession that I'm in, of being a chiropractor. I'm changing my verbiage of talking to people about their pain when they first come in, but then after that it's, well, what's improved? How are things improving in your life? What have you noticed has changed? Because so much of when you talk to people about pain, it keeps them in their pain.
Mhm.
in some way.
Mhm.
It just keeps
Mhm.
reminding them, and it's not a way of helping them hide from it, but it's also helping
Mm.
them focus on where they want to be.
Well, and I think there's a couple of things that you're saying there, that I want to point out, that in the work that I do, it's super interesting. So sometimes when we talk about the pain, yeah, it can continue to perpetuate that cycle of pain. But oftentimes the way that we talk about the pain is trying to battle the pain,
Mm, yeah,
trying to take up battle with it. I mean, because I've worked with a lot of people who are not going to get better.
yeah.
They're terminal. I've held the hands of people while they've passed, and it's not about getting them out of their pain. That's not an option.
Hmm.
But allowing them to be with their pain and no longer having to fight it. I was working with a man who had stage 4 lung cancer, and when he, we had been friends prior and worked together prior, but when he came to me with this, we started talking, and I got rid of the verbiage fighting, I asked him if that would be okay to work with different kinds of verbiage rather than fighting the cancer and fighting the body and fighting all of these things. And he said, that is music to my ears right now. He said, because, I'm going down. Cancer is going to take me down, but I'm not going to go down fighting. I'm going to go down loving. And the moment we were able to lay down the fight with the pain, it changed. And so even looking at the verbiage around how we then express the pain and talk about the pain, what if we allowed the pain to be there and allowed its intelligence to come through? Maybe it's coming through the body, or maybe it's coming through the mind, or maybe there's a different kind of intelligence that's coming from the life, like this man I was just telling you about, that's coming from just like, hey, in the bigger picture of your life, you just need to sit down. So what if we laid the battle with pain down and just let it speak to us of its wisdom? That's one aspect of what you were saying that I'd like to kind of insert there, of like,
Hmm.
yes, talking about the pain, but how do we talk about it, and can we lay the battle down with it? And to some degree, I think people don't want to do this because they think they'll get lost there forever, but to some degree, to surrender to the pain. And when we lay the battle down, I've never seen it not shift. It always shifts. But then the other thing that, from the realm of the work that I do, is that though you might have pain, in one part of, and this is what you were speaking to, in like one part of your body, that's not the entirety of your body.
Yeah.
And then in the, this perspective that I work through, in the sort of spiritual perspective of yoga, it's like, and also just scientifically, we know we're not just a body.
Hmm.
We're also, we have a mind, and we have this energy that enlivens the body, because a body is, without any energy is just a corpse, right? So we've got the energy that enlivens it. And then we have this intelligence that it's like the intelligence of life. It's the same kind of intelligence that grows through the tree, that kind of guides the tree to be a seed when it needs to be a seed, to grow roots down when it needs to do that, to poke up through the ground when it needs to do that, to start building its trunk and growing its limbs and leaves. That same kind of intelligence, and also that intelligence knows when it's time for the leaves to shed and things to decay, and for it to go back to the earth. And so that same intelligence lives in us. And then, we also have this capacity in the realm of our being for just I think it would be a huge aspect of our being to just know that we're totally interconnected. So, let's say I have an injured foot, which I've had in the past. I'm not just a foot, but pretty soon we can all be like, me and anyone who's trying to help me can be like, oh my gosh, there's Meg and she's just a foot. And everybody's in that layer of my existence, which is
Hmm.
one part of just my body. But in this sort of realm, we can expand not only our perspective of ourselves, but our experience of ourselves by working through all of these other layers of our existence, so that we can inhabit our wholeness. I mean, ultimately, as we look at the word healing, it comes from the Latin root hal, which means to make whole.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So if we can start to live into our wholeness, And from this bigger sort of experienced perspective, start to acknowledge like the wholeness of who we are. Our pain can have a seat. It's not the entirety of our existence. It can have a seat. And from there, it's a lot easier also to begin to mine the gem of the treasure of our pain. And it might not happen right in the midst of it. It might happen later as we look hindsight. But from that larger experienced perspective, we can see what's right in the pain a lot easier than when we're just in the middle of it.
So well said. So many parts of that I was just like, yes. Yeah. Yeah. We can easily we're kind of trained to be fixated on the pain and the negativity of it, but I just love the wholesome aspect of it, of bringing it into the entire body. I know that in my last men's retreat that I just was a part of, I was speaking in ways that I was like, yeah, part of me is thinking this, and I was separating myself from myself. Mm-hmm. Rather than as soon as I noticed that and changed it to just saying, I am feeling this, my entire body felt united. And it seems with people with pain, there's a sense of separation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they separate themselves. I've experienced that myself and seen it in others too, of like, yeah, a part of me is this and a part of me is that, like you were saying. But also people who have been in chronic pain for a long time, they don't inhabit their bodies anymore.
Yeah.
Or inhabit them in interesting kinds of ways. But yeah, it's an interesting thing to just, like you're saying, a part of me feels this and a part of me is this, versus just saying, I am feeling such and so. You know what I mean? Like it's such an interesting ownership and such an interesting shift of how we can express the truth. And if you say that, you're like, I am feeling this. You're not proclaiming I am that. Yeah. You're just like, I am just feeling that. That's one part of me, this feeling part of me that feels that. And my mind might go around it and be like, and I don't like it. That's the mind coming in and being like, I'm feeling that and I don't like it. But that's not the end of the story. I mean, I think that's the only, is the only thing I'd like to add there is like, whatever it is that's, that you're feeling, that's not the end of the story.
A word that you mentioned that I would love for you to describe a little bit more, and is the word surrender. And it's a word that is not necessarily thrown around, but it's talked a lot about, of just like, just surrender to it. Especially when it deals with healing. I'd love to just hear your take on that.
Yeah, I feel like it's a really powerful word, and I think you're right. It is being thrown around a lot, and we need to reclaim its potency for sure. Because what does that really mean? What does that really look like? To surrender to me is to lay down my battle with something. We throw around a lot in the circles that we're in the term of letting go. Just let go. And I like to think of surrender in terms of letting go, but not letting go of something. Because when we want to let go of something, like a lot of times we pull, we're like, oh, I'm going to surrender. I'm just going to let go. And really, we're not surrendering at all, because usually when we say, I want to let go of something, it's something that we don't like. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say, like, this feels so good and I feel so joyful, I'm just going to let it go. Like that's not it. And usually letting go turns into, like, that form of letting go turns into a just another practice of aversion and desire. Like get rid of the things I don't like and let me get the things I do like. But when I think about surrender, I think about letting go into whatever it is. So whatever is arising for me in the moment, I surrender by letting go into it. And I just lay the struggle down with it, which might just mean, I mean, it sounds maybe esoteric, but it might just mean letting go of the grip that I hold in my chest in a moment, just noticing that it's there and some part of me is bracing against reality or thoughts or whatever's coming at me, and just let go, soften my chest and the muscles in my chest and let go into it. And surrender is, to me, such an amazingly powerful practice. I think it gets a bad rap, like, oh, if you surrender, then you're just going to get run over. But when we lay down our battle with whatever it is that we're being asked to face in the moment, and we surrender into it, we let go into it, we allow ourselves fully into it, that's how we get to start to become curious about it. And when we start to, accept and allow and surrender into things and get curious, we get to understand it in a much, much, much deeper way. Maybe not all the way to the end of it, but pulling back into truth. Like, we get to understand deeper and deeper layers of truth when we start to lay our battle down. And then ultimately, after, we've started to understand a little bit more, we start to engage in a whole new way with whatever the experience is. And so to me, surrender is the seed of really, really, really big power. And, in the face of healing, to a big degree, a lot of the clients that I've worked with, that was their only choice.
So just fully surrender and just turn towards it.
Because, sometimes life is going to give something to you that you can't get rid of. Mm-hmm. And you can either, like I was telling you with my one client, you can either battle it and live the days of your life battling, or you can surrender and, and begin to live through it. Even if in the end you don't live, but you begin to live and grow and love through it versus trying to battle your way around it. Mm-hmm. And, I'd be really curious. I don't know if I would like to ask you a question.
Go for it. I love it.
But, I led a class at at the Wanderlust Festival this year on the power of surrender. And there were a lot of men in the class. And like, kind of atypically so, in the yoga realm, it tends to be like, 3/4 women and 1/4 men. And this was like maybe 2/3 women, 1/3 men, maybe mm-hmm. a little bit more. It might have been half and half. But after class, I had an unusually high amount of amazing men come up to me and say, thank you for, opening up and breaching that subject of surrender. And I just, I was really, really, really humbled by that. And I was just, and I noticed that it was, literally mostly all men who came up after class, and almost all of the men that were in class came up. And so I just wonder, from a male perspective, what surrender is like to you, and why it would be such a relief to allow that to be okay.
Yeah, the word that for me is synonymous with surrender is vulnerability. And that for me is truth, and that kind of ties into what we've been talking about. And a surrender is it really, for me, in my experience of doing shadow work and turning more towards the darkness instead of fighting the things, that for me is a great initiation of taking one step closer towards surrendering. And it's my last men's retreat that I was a part of just a couple of weeks ago, when I feel a full surrender, it's as if I don't have to hold myself up anymore. It's that I allowed myself to get to a place where these other men can hold me up and hold space for me and breathe for me. And it allowed the energy and all the fight, because one of my experiences of moving through one of my shadows was I had this hand on my shoulder since I was 6 months old. It was this nurse's hand that was on my shoulder that was holding me down in a way of protecting me. And it felt like, until that moment of 2.5 weeks ago, I noticed that this part of my body's been fighting. And once I allowed myself to see it and see that there was a fight, I didn't even know, because I was fighting for so long. It was just a normal thing, right? Once I saw it, and and allowed myself to even push the hand off of my shoulder,
Mm.
I felt this tremendous amount of sadness and energy just pulsate through my body that was greater than what my ego could even be compared to.
Mm.
And I was in a cuddle puddle with these other guys, and they were supporting me and holding me, and for me, that surrender is just it is healing for me.
Yeah.
It's so healing that it is very, if we think of the body posture of shavasana, of being in this
Mm.
completely open, like very vulnerable position of my guts and my heart and my throat, and my hands are just like, take me. I am
Yeah.
here. I am not fighting anymore. I am being supported by the earth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for men, I mean, it's that first step to vulnerability is I think put into our mind of weakness
Mhm. Mhm.
and giving up, and men don't give up, and I mean it's very generalized, but
Yeah.
that's kind of the society
Yeah.
of, I got my shit together, I'm going to take care of the household, regardless of whatever, and I'm always going to wear my armor as my knight, even in the house, even in the bed.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
like I
Mhm.
take it with me wherever I go. But underneath that armor is this incredibly tender soul and heart that all men have. We have this
Mhm.
incredible empathic ability
Mhm.
that it's it seems to be pulsating more now than ever.
That's amazing.
And I'm excited to be co-facilitating the man camp this weekend here up in Bend, Oregon, of helping men or guiding men into how I've experienced my body to find that vulnerability and that place of surrender.
Yeah.
Because and it's trust. There's a huge amount of trust involved too.
Mhm.
Like in your bio, you were talking about being able to create safe places for this to happen. I think that is such a
Mm.
huge component to this.
Well, I think it is. I mean, it's just because it's like you're saying, and as you're speaking to that, thank you for sharing that. Vulnerability is hard to open up, and I'm just sitting here wondering, like, what's the preliminary work of surrender then? And preliminary work of vulnerability. And I think you're right. It's trust, because without that, we can allow ourselves to be. I mean, because what I heard you say is, like, I allowed myself to be fully human. I could go into those dark places. I could recognize that I don't have to hold myself up. I could recognize, the sadness and all of it. This is just what it is to be human. And, we need to have a trusting, safe spaces where we can be completely human. And then you're like, oh, and I'm in a cuddle puddle with all of these other guys. I mean, because that's where then we get to be together. And if we
Mhm.
can't be fully human, we don't actually get to be together.
Mhm.
And then this rush of vitality that you're speaking of is so, I think that's profound strength and power, but in a whole different way. It's not the strength and power that we've been, brought up to believe that, that we should have. It's,
Yeah.
it's a, it's a totally different thing that feels very much the opposite of weakness, but not in the same, it's not
Mhm.
like even in the same paradigm as
Mm-mm.
the power and strength that we were told that we had to grow up with and put on, like the armor you were saying. And these safe spaces and building trust are so important, so important.
And a lot of it for me comes from my trust in my body, and
Mm-hmm.
learning, over the last 20 years of all these different movement techniques and things that I believe in that help me know that my body is very resilient. Because as we were talking about with pain, some
Mm.
people start to have judgments against their body because of their age or because of the
Mm.
pain, or, oh, it's just breaking down because I'm turning 35. It's like, no, get the trust back up in your body. Start moving in different ways with yoga, with other different types of movement modalities that let you know that your body is resilient.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Being able to trust, being able to trust in the body, yes, and being able to trust in all of those other layers I was talking about. I've seen a lot of people come in and they're stuck in that layer of their body where it's like, oh, right, this is the only aspect of myself.
Yeah.
And now it's broken down and now I'm broken, right?
Yeah.
And that, like, you make that leap super, super quick, but there's so many other avenues and doorways in. And I just even think about, like, trusting in the body in the way of, like, when I get a fever, I actually really like it because I'm like, oh my God, look at my body doing its work, doing its good work to, like, have me be well. You know what I mean? And just, like, finding all of these different ways to trust in the body, be it with movement or not, or, whatever it is, but being able to do that, but also being able to trust in even more, right? The body. And then, even more for some people, it's going to be a while to be able to trust in their body because they feel like, to some degree, their body has betrayed them by getting older, by doing, whatever. And so we have to build the trust, and maybe we have to build it in small ways, and, and that kind of thing. And the other thing I think that we need to do is also a little bit shift the narrative. I'm sitting right there in this, in a body that's getting older. I'm not old by any stretch of the imagination, but, I'm going to be 50 in a couple of years. And it's so interesting because I'm being told by the world that I need to fix this problem of aging. And I'm like, I actually don't see this to be a problem. Like, I'm looking forward to turning 50. I'm looking for, like, I don't not love the lines on my face. I think they're beautiful, but everybody, wants to tell me that my body has betrayed me and that I now need to, like, get all these creams and do all these things. And, like, you know what I mean? And it's just like, and it's bullshit is what it is. And I feel like we need to, reclaim the rightness, like we were just talking about before, reclaim the rightness in all kinds of ways, and take the seat in the life that we have, and in the body that we have, and in the moment and at the time that we have, and to really be able to take a seat in that, and to be fully human in that, to become, I don't know, just exactly where we are as we are, without that having to be a big problem. I think we get so much connectivity out of problem solving. If you kind of look around at your day-to-day interactions, how many of those interactions are to solve a problem? And it's shockingly few how many interactions are just to be together and to, just, not have to be solving anything, but just to be together and in a different kind of way outside of problem solving. And it's such an interesting time that we're in, where that's where we connect, and it's almost exclusively, not always, but almost exclusively, we connect because there's something to fix.
Wow. That was a big boom right there.
Boom. Boom. Well, and I don't know about you, but, like, in my marriage, my husband's amazing. And if I come to him with something, his nature is to want to fix it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I don't need him to fix it. I just want him to hear it. That's it. That's nothing else needs to be done, and we've had the conversation, and he knows that, and we know that. And, but I'm like, I want to be able to connect, with people in a different realm. And yeah, of course, that's, if I come to him with something, he feels like he wants to fix it, but I feel like, and I don't want to stereotype, but I feel like that is, sort of the role that we've put on the men in our lives to fix everything. And so then, a lot of us get that, and perhaps men, I can't speak to men because I'm not one, but perhaps that's where we find our connectivity in fixing things, because that's what our role is. But what if our roles, just in general, were no longer to have to be about fixing something? And what if we could connect beyond problem solving?
Yeah. I mean, when you were just first talking about that, I was just, like, going in my mind of, like, God, how many of my connections with people on a day-to-day basis are based off of, I mean, being in the profession that I'm in too, is
Mm-hmm.
helping people with their so-called air quote problems.
Mm-hmm.
And how can I just be with people?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it brought up like what love is like when we're in such a loving moment, sometimes time can like bend and shift, and it seems like because there's no need to change anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge amount of acceptance and surrender too, probably at that same time.
Yeah. 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 It's just an interesting way to go and look around your life and go, all right, is there a different way to go about this? Can we be with each other just as we are?
I giggle.
Yeah.
Yeah, just from like in my own relationship with my wife Jennifer, it's yeah, there is that part of, yeah, look at that. See, my mind comes right in. There's that part of me. But I love the fact that I'm able to catch it.
Yep.
I want to help. I want to
Mm-hmm.
help. And there are times when I'm able to just listen, and it's just a cloud in the sky as it passes. There's other times where I want to ride that cloud like a bull and try to control it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it doesn't allow her to be fully with it, because now I'm
Right.
coming in and trying to change it.
Well, and that's just it. I mean, and I think that, even when we have that want to come in and help, like, oh, I want to help, and instead of letting that go, let go into that. Why do I want to help?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's at the root of that? What's my need?
Yeah. What's in it for me?
What's in it for one? What's your need? But I mean, like,
Yeah.
and once you start, I mean, and who even knows? Like, each one is different. But once we really start to peel back those layers of like, why is it that I want to help?
Yeah.
Oh, is it because I feel like I'm important? Is it that I feel like I don't believe that she can do it herself? What, I don't even know. Like, I mean, but once you start pulling on that thread, then you start to get somewhere closer to truth for yourself, and you can be more available for the person that you're being with.
Just relationship 101 right there.
Relationship 101. Well, I'm speaking from like a helper standpoint. Trust me. Like, it's because I've had to ask myself a million times. I mean, I was the helper in my family growing up.
Yeah.
So I totally get this, and this is something that I've had to, crawl underneath and crawl in for myself. Like, why do I want to help? Oh, right, because that gives me a place in this life and in this world. And do I have a place in this life, in this world, if I'm not helping, and and so on and so forth. So it's not without great my own personal discovery that this is coming to the fore. But when I can get to the base of that and to the root of that for myself, I am so much more available to what's true for me, and so I can be so much more available to whatever somebody else is saying, because then all of a sudden I own what's true for me, and whatever is going on with them, I don't have to make it about me either. I can let it be completely about them and what they're going through, and I can just be completely present for that. Otherwise, I'm not really that present, because I've got this underlying motive of I need to belong somehow and I need to fit in, and this is how I do it. I'm going to fix your problem for you.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I felt like I had that insight this last men's retreat of validation, of wanting validation from patients and validation from friends. And then that's what tied it into that whole thing about the nurse holding my shoulder down, because I wanted to know from her that I was going to be okay.
Yeah.
And I just from a very young age, like I've kind of created this story around it.
Yeah.
And then being able to, move that hand out of the way and hold that shoulder myself, and hold it myself, and saying like, no, I've got you now. I have myself. And I also know how to ask for help.
Yeah. That's huge.
Well, what, to kind of switch the frame a little bit, what roadblocks have you encountered, with talking to people about healing, and successfully navigated in your own life, and then also in all the teachings that you've done around the world?
What roadblocks have I encountered? when I'm talking to them about healing, yes.
Yeah. Even
Mm-hmm.
like a personal one-on-one that you might be having with somebody. We kind of already talked a little bit about it.
Yep.
About wholesome, but if there's anything specific.
Mm. I mean, I think that, I mean, you just said specific, and I was going to say, maybe I'll go general again, is just, you know, people feel like, you know, on this road of healing. Well, you know what, this is something that I'd like to bring up actually, Mike, is that I have met quite a few people who have built their life around their pain. And so when they come to me and, you know, about, you know, they come to me and we're talking about healing, and we're talking about where they are now and where they're, you know, how they're moving forward and how we can be with that. Their pain has actually had its time and place, and they're not ready to move on, because without their pain, they don't know who they would be. I know a woman who lost her husband and in an accident, and she has grieved deeply, and obviously that's going to be a part of her story and who she is for her whole life. But she built, you know, and a lot of people do this, and I'm not saying that you can't do it, but she built an entire life around the pain of losing her husband, foundations, and, you know, all that kind of thing. And so it's like picking at the scab every day and never allowing it to heal. And so if she were to allow that scab to heal, who would she be without that? You know what I mean? And so it's super, super, super interesting when we get a lot of payback from our challenges and from our pain. Mm-hmm. Get a lot of attention. We get a lot of payback, which is not a problem, but we do get a lot of payback from that. And so it's interesting when the storm is past, how we start to be storm chasers and go follow it around.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, you know, that's one roadblock, which is super interesting. And I feel like the way that I've, you know, been able to navigate that is allowing people, you know, helping people with tools to come into the present and to get really into the present moment and what really is still true now. Because we talk about a lot of the things, and I think that, you know, like even we talk about a lot of the ways that our past has shaped us. I mean, my past shaped me, obviously. And just like everyone else, there was a lot of challenges in my past. Just like everyone else, I had really complicated family dynamics. And that has shaped me. And I'm not 5 anymore.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You know, and you know, and my father is no longer an alcoholic, like he was at the time, but he is not anymore. You know what I mean? And we've all grown and shifted and changed and moved through life into a whole new space. And to some degree, by, you know, marrying myself to the pain that happened at 5 years old, and you know, keeping that alive for myself here at 47, you know, there's a part of it that threads through for sure, but there's a part of it that holds me stuck. But I get a lot of payback from saying I had a hard childhood or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's such an interesting thing. But if I can come into the present moment and really allow myself to be, like, get really present with who I am and how I'm feeling and all of these different layers of my existence right now, and then even to that degree, to continually show up and get present to who my dad is, because he's not the same person as when I was 5. And we hold each other, we hold each other hostage to the people that they once were, even though we're no longer those people. Yeah. And I hold myself hostage to that. Do you know what I mean? But I think that it's super interesting. Part of us in our lives gets so much payback from the pain that we had, you know, at 5 or 10 or whatever. And it's like, okay, yeah, and I'm not 5. And my dad's not 35. You know, and so that's a roadblock, I think, that that continually pops up, and that's an interesting one to navigate. And it takes a lot of trust and a lot of surrender of the story that you carry with you to really get vulnerable and to see where and how and who you are right now. But then also, let's say your pain has involved somebody else from the past, to allow yourself to, get present to where and who and how they are right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that point up, because
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that too, and people in my life, and at times in my life too, of my identity is my struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just live through that, and it's just constantly talking about it, rather than, similar to that quote of that meme at the beginning. It's
Mm-hmm.
not that it doesn't have to haunt me anymore.
Yeah.
It's like I survived it.
Yeah.
And I've grown from it.
You've survived it, and perhaps you've even moved on.
Yeah, and thrived beyond it.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It's thrived beyond it. I mean, it's thrusted you in a trajectory that maybe you never would have gone,
Mm-hmm.
and now here you are on the other side of it. Yeah.
And that comes from that process that we were talking about of truth, trust, safety, surrender,
Mm-hmm.
all of those,
Mm-hmm.
and the awareness to even have that
Yeah.
we are greater than the body, we are greater than the mind, and we are greater than the soul.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so how do we, and like, this is the thing, I think that you and I both continue to try to figure out how we do this in our lives. How do we create or become safe spaces for this revelation of truth within ourselves and for others? And how do we do that? How do we do that as people, and in this world? What are the tools that we have to be better at creating safe spaces?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that was a question I was going to ask you. Like, what's a tip or something that you can share with the listeners that they could start living this more connected, truthful, healthier life?
Yeah. I think, and just is personally where I am and have been for a little while now, is cultivating a better capacity for listening.
How does that look?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like first listening to yourself. I mean, you were talking about trusting your body again. So listening to your body, but like, I often like to say, if you listen to your body whisper, maybe you don't have to hear it scream, and getting better at listening and refining your listening to the more subtle aspects of things in your body. And then also listening to what goes on in your mind. I mean, just speaking to all these different layers, listening to what goes on in your mind, not necessarily having to engage in everything, but, if a judgment comes up for me right now, like, I like to listen to that judgment and use it as a pointer back to myself. If a judgment comes up, it's 99.999. It's always pointing back to a need that I have within myself that I haven't been able to meet. So I can listen better internally through my emotions and through my thoughts and through, all the different things that come up. Listen to my fear. I listen to my sadness. I listen to my joy. Talking about, also moving a little bit beyond just the body and the mind layer of this natural intelligence that weaves through every one of us, that intelligence I was speaking of earlier, that, allows the tree to grow and then decay how it does. That intelligence lives in me too. And so taking the time for quietude, to really be in silence and to listen to that. I mean, some people could call it intuition or intelligence or wisdom, deep-seated inner wisdom. So listening in those kinds of ways. And so I feel like it starts there for me. And like you said earlier, it looks like getting up in the morning before my family gets up, so that I can pay attention to my body and I can pay attention to my mental still an emotional state, and I can pay attention to the intelligence and the wisdom that's kind of inspiring me that day. And then I'm more capable and able to listen to my daughter Lily when she comes downstairs. And if she's coming downstairs and she's freaking out, then maybe I have the capacity to listen to her without trying to jump in and fix it. And just be like, oh, can I just be here while you're, I can see that you're struggling right now, Lily. You mind if I just hold you while you struggle, or can I listen, or whatever? But, being there without having to jump in with an answer to fix it, just listening and letting her speak it all the way through to its own resolve. I think there's so much power in allowing others to speak until they come to their own inner wisdom and their own truth, and it almost always comes through. So, listening better to my family, but then also listening better to this world and to the cries of the world, without having to jump in, but just to be a safe place of deep listening where any truth can be held in love, even if it's something that's incredibly hard. To be able to hold that in love. And it definitely starts with me being able to listen internally, so that as I move out in the world externally, being able to listen and hold space better. I think that's the tool that to me feels the most profound at the moment, and has been for many years. Yeah,
it's a big one. Listening. Listening not only with our ear, but our inner ears and our heart and our cells. Listening without having to react.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything that you're currently reading right now that is inspiring that you would like to share?
Anything that I'm reading, I love reading. Right, the book that I'm reading right now is called Wild Mercy by Mirabai Starr. It's about the divine feminine, so I'm not entirely sure how the men in your podcast will love that. But it's an amazing book. I also just started rereading the book Quantum Theology.
Oh,
which
deep.
It sounds really deep, but it is, but it's kind of amazing. I've always been fascinated on how science and spirituality have never seemed to me such divergent paths. I've always been fascinated how science and spirituality and sort of validate one another instead of invalidate one another. And this book has a lot of interesting stuff about that in there. So I love that book and how it sort of explains both sides of science and spirituality. Yeah. And we're also reading Harry Potter, Order of the Phoenix with my daughter Lily. So there's that one. We turn on the Harry Potter channel, get that book out. Yeah. Wow. So I know.
All different realms of reality with all these different books.
But isn't that what we're here for? Like, just in general, to like just like take it all of it.
Yeah, soak it up.
Soak it all in. Take all perspectives, all things. Just like eat it up. Isn't that why we're here?
Because then in the process of that, like when I'm leading this new metaphysical book club, at least it might challenge something within ourselves to have us look at something different.
Yeah.
It expands our horizons.
Yeah. Oh, can I share with you one more book? That is like
sure.
one of my favorite books that is like rooted like in very much practical reality. I think I've told you about this before. It's called The Sun Does Shine by Anthony Ray Hinton. And it's an amazing book. And to me, it fully encapsulates what it is to heal. And the subtitle of the book is I think it's how I found life and freedom on death row.
Damn.
Right. And so that book to me encapsulates, it's a true story of a Black man in the Deep South who was wrongfully convicted of murder and sentenced to death row. He spent 30 years there before he got out. And that man did the work of healing. Yeah, and not only did he help to heal himself, but the way that he was able to um, heal some of the racial divides is really incredible. So that's a tremendous book that that I think that everybody will love.
I'll definitely put those books in the show notes, even the Harry Potter one.
Okay.
Just in case anyone hasn't heard that one yet.
Yeah.
Well, where can listeners get more information about you? Like where you have upcoming yoga retreats and then also teacher trainings. Where's the best place for them to find you?
Yeah, my website, megmccracken.com, is probably the best and easiest. I'm on Instagram at Meg McCracken Yoga and Facebook Meg McCracken Yoga as well, so can keep up with me on there. Yeah, those are the best places.
Wonderful. And I'll definitely put those links in the show notes as well so people can find you, because you're all over the place. You just came back from Kapalu. You're going up to Montana. You go to Costa Rica.
Yes, I know. Yes. My life is awesome. And it's so good to be home right now. I'm taking a tiny little pause, but yes, I've got 2020 schedules just about to be launched, and I'll be all over the place. Be fun.
Delicious.
Yes, it is.
Well, Meg McCracken, thank you for not only this beautiful insight, this conversation that we've had here on the podcast, but just a friendship that we've created over these years. I think I started teaching with you in, oh my God, was it 2012 or 2013? I don't even know.
I think maybe 2012. Yeah, I think so.
I think I just graduated
somewhere around there. You just graduated.
And right off the bat, we had just a wonderful connection. So
it's been great.
It's really beautiful and lovely to have you in my life, and for everything that you're sharing with your community and your family. It's really beautiful to know you and know that life is that much better knowing that you're here.
Oh, thank you so much. I just love that I get to walk through this life with you. It's really been amazing. You're an amazing human, and I hope that you know that. Yeah. Yeah. I just appreciate you so much. Yeah.
Feeling it. All right, Meg. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.